as many of you know, I've now talked to hundreds and hundreds of Trump supporters, some of the most hardcore ones, at events across the country over the last few years. And because of those experiences, I find that rarely am I shocked by a moment or an interview with a Trump supporter, because either I have heard it before, heard something like it before, or sort of expect what's going to be said. But I have something very different than that for you today. And this is something that really sat with me after I watched it. I was really thinking about it a lot and sort of disturbing. And this comes from a series that Donnie O'Sullivan of CNN is doing that is called Misinformation, the Trump Faithful. And he conducted an interview shortly before she went to prison with Rachel Powell, who is now in prison for her actions on January 6th. And as we go along, instead of making you wait a super long time while I do a super long introduction, while we go along, I'll explain what disturbs me so much about this, and I'm sure you'll feel a similar way. So here's the beginning, then we'll get to the part that sort of made the news.
Wow, this is gorgeous. How are you?
Good.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yep. My name's Rachel Powell, and I've had 8 kids, so I've been busy. And I have my 7th grandchild coming up to be born this year.
This is your last weekend before you go into prison for the next 4 or 5 years. How have you been spending the weekend?
I'm going to pause your viewing of this video super quickly to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just click that subscribe button, and right next to it is the join button, so you can become a member to get the daily bonus show by clicking that join button. Back to the video.
I know it's not a funeral procession, but it kind of reminds me of that. My friends, my family, they've been coming in and just been really busy, which is good, because when it gets quiet for a minute, that's when the emotion set in.
Do you remember where you were when you heard that Biden had won the election?
I do. I was at my house and I got a phone call saying that Biden won, and I was like, what?
You couldn't believe it?
No, absolutely. And people around me couldn't believe it either.
You still can't believe it?
I still can't believe it.
So I'm going to play more, and it'll get into what she did. She absolutely needs to be and is being held legally accountable, and she needs to do her time and all of that. And so that is point one. But also, what loyalty to Trump does to you is it sort of turns people who otherwise are good people, right? I mean, I have no reason to doubt she's a good mother, good friend, whatever. But it can turn people into really bad actors, as you're about to see when it goes through what she did, and a part of a really dangerous movement. And I've talked about before, it is really difficult to hold those two thoughts in your mind simultaneously. And this is something that emotionally confuses me whenever I conduct these interviews myself at Trump rallies, where before we get into the political stuff, sometimes we'll just have a little small talk to sort of get comfortable and just an absolutely pleasant conversation. And then we get into the political, and all of a sudden it's, you know, Biden should be tried for treason. And you're just, wait, what? I don't get it. And it's a similar thing here where she's talking about her family, and now she's ruining, at least for a period of time, her life and in part their lives. Now their mother and their grandmother won't be in their life because of her actions, again, that she needs to be held accountable for. But at the end of the day, Trump at the tip top of this doesn't care one single bit. And that's what's really sick about observing this moment, where people have loyalty to a man who has absolutely no loyalty to them and is using them. And in this moment, he tried to use them to stop the peaceful transfer of power, and now doesn't care about them at all.
Why did you decide to go to DC on January 6th?
Well, how often does a president ask you to come to a rally? Doesn't happen.
At some point, this goes from peaceful
Politicians ask you to go to rallies all the time, but okay.
protest to you having an ice axe in your hand.
Mm-hmm. Like,
did somebody give you the ice axe?
Yeah.
Who?
I don't know.
You don't remember? You'd admit this is a bad look, obviously.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You know how dumb I feel when I look at this picture? Like, oh my goodness. Like...
You had an axe in your hand. You broke a window. You were shouting over a bullhorn to tell people to take the building.
Yep.
Why should people believe that you weren't trying to overturn the election and do something illegal and commit insurrection?
It's ridiculous. If we went there with a plan to take that building with as many people as were there, and we were coordinated, we'd have been in there in like 30 seconds.
So again, I have more to play, but to stop just in a few different moments here, I don't really feel like getting back into the debate because it's a ridiculous one about was it or was it not insurrection. Obviously it was, and apparently she can't be convinced on that. But from her perspective, what's so unfortunate is that there were people there who were far more organized than she was, right? The Oath Keepers, for example, explicitly laid out in a memo that was uncovered how they wanted to overthrow the government. And there was that intention, and there were more organized efforts. And also there were people who did go from the rally. And then it seems like she all of a sudden found herself choosing to, her actions, break a window in and try to violently break into the United States Capitol. And so again, I say, I don't think that she came into the world someone who just inherently wants to do bad things, but got so dedicated to the Trump cult that she decided to. And the fact that her response afterwards is, oh, it's sort of embarrassing. I feel so stupid for doing that. And not the actions that I engaged in were because of, as she said, Donald Trump directing her to go to the Capitol and to come to this rally. And that should cause her a little introspection about the movement that she's in. But she doesn't have that introspection, as you're about to see.
Have you ever had a moment where you're like, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Biden actually won the election. Maybe I'm the conspiracy theorist.
No, not at all. Nope.
So in a few days, you're going to be reporting to federal prison.
Right.
How have you talked about that to your children?
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's like my last weekend before I go in. But, like, I love my children so much. And so it's like the last thing that they can take from me. And,
Okay, so I'll stop that part there, and then we'll get to the final part in just a second here. But do you see what I mean? Trump, for his own purposes, because he was a power-hungry egomaniac, lied about our elections to such an extent that she felt it justified to attack the Capitol, trying to block the certification of Biden's win. Now her life has been ruined, at least for the time being. Her kids won't have their mother in their life for that period of time. And Trump feels nothing, and she is not motivated by that to leave the Trump cult. The ending, I'll spoil it for you, is her saying she's hopeful Trump will pardon her. And you heard her there say that she still believes the election was stolen. She doesn't believe herself to be a conspiracy theorist. And is that because to accept that would be to fully admit you were just duped and your actions weren't even going too far but for a justified cause, but they were going too far, doing something extremely dangerous and harmful, being a part of this historic anti-democratic attempt, and it was all based on lies? Does that feel worse to admit to? But regardless, she's sticking by the guy who caused this in her life. I mean, she did, because she's the one who actually did the stuff, but because of her dedication to Trump. And that's what just absolutely horrifies me, that you can not only bring yourself to do the things that she did and still believe the lies that she believes, but after all of the horrific damage that is being caused because of her actions and because of Trump's directing of those actions to her own life, she can't then say, maybe I'm in the wrong movement. Because listen, I think Biden's been a pretty dang solid president. He says, go to the Capitol, and I see people violently attacking it. I'm not going to be a part of that. Sorry. No matter how good I think the Inflation Reduction Act was. And that shows you just a really frightening difference in the support for the two different candidates.
so this hat says, Rachel, we love you. Trump.
Are you hoping Trump will pardon you?
I know he'll pardon me. That's not a hope. I know that Trump will pardon me.
Rachel still had faith in Trump, even faith in the election lies that were sending her to prison.
So her faith is still in Trump after everything. She wouldn't have to be experiencing the pain that she's experiencing if she didn't act on behalf of the wishes of Donald Trump. But still, he's the one that she's trusting and having faith in, and has her MAGA flag up there next to the American flag. And I will say to Rachel Powell, unfortunately, that I don't know, or at least I'm hoping that Trump won't have the chance, even if he were willing, because Biden is going to win. That's my hope. But regardless, I express this thought a lot when we go over these sorts of stories. It always causes some people to be upset for some reason, even though it seems like a profoundly reasonable thought. And you heard me mention it already. But it's sort of the passionately oppose while having some compassion, or being able to try to understand what's going through the followers' heads. And that doesn't mean that we at all concede any political ground, zero. But when I watch a moment like this, I think it's hard not to think, gosh, ow, that hurts. And watching her tear up, of course, about her children not being able to be with their mom. And so then that adds an extra disturbing layer where not only are you watching someone who is so dedicated to Trump that they could go to prison for him and still be loyal to him, but it's not an oath keeper, for example. When I hear of or see that the oath keepers are in prison, my heart doesn't ache at all. It's just sort of like, yeah, you guys seem crazy. She has horribly dangerous views. And so we have to be so passionately opposed to that. And we have to do all the work, as I do every single day, to make sure that her view is not reflected in the people that get into power. But my goodness, it's even worse to hear these stories about people getting the accountability they should be getting, but their life being ruined in so many ways because of their dedication to Trump. And yeah, my heart does hurt for her, even understanding that this is how the story needs to go. But sometimes it is hard to hold those thoughts simultaneously. You and your movement threaten democracy. And I feel pain for you when I watch this. And that is really unfortunate. And so it gets us all the way back to Trump is really damaging for the country. Trump is really damaging for his opposition. And MAGA, he's also really damaging for you. And some of you who love him the most, first of all, he doesn't care about you. And also, he hurts you the most. And because of your dedication to him, you experience so much more pain than you'd have to. And I'll leave it there. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments.